You're watching Fugitive Red Eye, and welcome to another episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru. Yeah, I know, it has been a while since I've done one of these. The last one I did was over a year ago, because it was April 1st of last year. And then this year, for April 1st, I did something else. But here's a real episode, one that's actually true. But yeah, Tales from the Drive-Thru, if you're unfamiliar, since it has been a while, is my series where I talk about my various exploits in the work industry. Sometimes as a customer, sometimes as an employee. Today we're talking about as an employee, and we'll be talking about when I worked in a call center. And we'll specifically be talking about a coworker I had working in that call center. So, you meet a lot of interesting people in the call center business, both over the phone and with the people you work with. I plan on doing some more episodes about customers that I had to deal with in the future, but this is about a coworker. So, in my training group, there was quite a lot of people that actually didn't make it on to become full-time over-the-phone agents. I worked tech support over the phone in that call center. And one of the guys that didn't make it through training because he got in trouble was this man who, he has a common enough name, so we'll just keep his first name, James. He was a black man in his 50s, about no hair, glasses, always wearing clothes that are trying to look nice, but feel like they're like bargain bin versions of nice clothes. Always used to like to brag about how he bought his clothes at the DI and Savers, which are both thrift stores. But James was an interesting chap, like I said. Older guy in his 50s. Apparently he had some kids of his own. And we'll get to that in a minute, because he had some interesting stuff that he said about that. But he was a very strange man. Constantly spouting complete and utter nonsense and telling stories that don't go anywhere. I should also mention that although his name was James, he always said, "My name is James, but everybody calls me KJ," which is not true. Nobody fucking called him KJ. And the reason he called himself KJ was fucking stupid. It was literally some We Was Kang shit. Like, the K stood for king. He's like, well, you know, in Africa, we would have been kings. Fuck off. Just fuck off with that shit. I don't care. He would also spout a bunch of stuff about, like, your third eye and your power of the third eye and all this stuff you could use if you could channel it. And then he'd, like, have all these weird, like, theories and shit he'd spout off. I don't remember most of them, in all honesty, because a lot of what he said was just complete and total non sequitur. He didn't make any sense most of the time. He would constantly talk as if he was a pimp. I don't believe that he was, but he did always kind of wear that kind of garb, like the very colorful clothes, which again, he bought at thrift stores. The big earrings, the glasses, the hats, which we didn't allow hats at the call center, so he actually had to take it off. In the call center we worked at, for the first little while I worked there, we were supposed to wear ties with our uniform. And he's like, could I wear a bow tie? And my trainer's like, well, I mean, I'd fight for it. You know, I'd argue it. It's like, okay. But then, like, his reasoning is because Malcolm X wore a bow tie. He was very, very, like, kind of black supremacist in his views, this James guy was. Very much so. But he was really weird. Like, he would constantly, like, hit on the female employees and ask them shit like, so when are we gonna date? And then later on, it turned out, like, he was, and he also used to sell gumbo on company property. I bought some of his gumbo once. It was decent, but, like, from what I understand, it's bitch-ass gumbo compared to some of the shit you get down in Louisiana, which is apparently where he was from. But the shit he was making, from what I understand, is nothing compared to, like, real authentic gumbo. Like, it was alright, though. I enjoyed it. It had, like, crab meat and, like, rice and stuff in it, but, like, which, again, I've heard isn't necessarily how gumbo is usually made, but I don't know enough about gumbo to be an authority on that. But it was tasty enough. But I only ever bought one bowl from him because he charged like $10 a bowl. And it was a small-ass bowl. And he was like, oh yeah, I get up at 4 a.m. every morning to make gumbo so I can sell it here. But then it turned out gumbo wasn't the only thing he was selling on company property, and this is where he ran himself into trouble. So as I said, he was constantly being really creepy with the female employees, which were all very much younger than him. I mean, granted, they were all of age, so whatever, but they were definitely younger than him, young enough to be his daughter, for sure. Because apparently he had an adult-age daughter. Anyway, he would constantly flirt with them and, you know, say, oh, you were on the corner, and shit like that, and, like, basically insinuate they were prostitutes. And he had this thing he used to always say where he'd be like, I can't be your daddy, but I can be your daddy. Like, again, very, very, very weird sense of humor he had. Like, I found it funny just because, again, this guy was fucking losing it. He was not the brightest. But, He also, like I said, wasn't only selling the gumbo on company property, he was also selling, apparently, OxyContin and counterfeit purses. And that's where he got in trouble. And that's why he didn't finish training. Apparently they didn't call the police on him. They just, fired him. And then he showed up later on and kept selling gumbo on company property for a while before they eventually told him to fuck off. But he'd constantly just say the name Donald Trump. He wouldn't even say anything about the man. Granted, this was pre-election. This was, the year leading up to the election. So it was, late 2015, early 2016. And he would just randomly throw Trump's name into his sentences for no reason at all and not have any context to it. Anytime anyone said anything vaguely bad, he'd be like, oh, Donald Trump. And it's not even something that, the most skewed view of Trump would even say. It was very just, oh, Donald, oh, there was a drug dealer that got arrested the other day. Oh, Donald Trump. It was really fucking weird. He would just say his name randomly. I don't get it. I don't care what you think of the guy. That's not what this is about. Just randomly throwing his name into sentences or as a response to something does not make fucking sense. Yeah, it's a very odd group. James was definitely the weird one of the group, though. For all I know, James is still out there selling his gumbo and randomly saying Donald Trump without actually having it mean anything. And talking about the power of his third eye. But there was also a story one time that he said that he claimed that this guy had his daughter sitting on his lap, and then he held the gun to his head and told him not to do that, which I don't believe any of that. I think he was just trying to sound tough. But yeah, James, fucking weird guy. Definitely one of the most interesting people in training. But yeah, that's all I have to say. But yeah, that's all I have for this episode of Tales from the Drive-Thru. Been a while, but here it is. Have a good one.